Good afternoon. We'll go ahead and just jump right in. So we'll do a roll call
All right, if you are here, please indicate so by saying present or here. MK Sadiq,
here.
Ann Hobridge,
Here.
Pamela Garvey, Kaylin McCoy,
Here.
Nikki Smith,
Present.
Connor Kerrigan.
Here.
All right, you have 5 present. You have a quorum. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. So today is a slight oversight here, January 27th. And January 27th marks the day that we're going to hit the ground running and hopefully come to some decisions regarding the uh, the discussion points that we have here, such as qualifications and such. But first, let's see if we can get approval of the minutes. Did you all have a chance to review the minutes? Is there anything that needs to be corrected? One thing I saw was that in the minutes towards the end, we spelled Kaylin's name with an A, as in Kayla McCoy, as opposed to Kaylin. But other than that, I think everything pretty much represents what was discussed on the 13th.
Yes, I can change that and just mark it down as a Scrivener's error, so you won't need to see an updated copy as long as the task force members are okay with that.
Yep. All right. Excellent. Cool. So then we call for a vote for the approval of the minutes. All right.
That's correct. You want to either make a motion yourself or ask someone to make a motion and then get a second. And then you can say all in favor, aye. And if anyone's opposed, they can say no.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to call for a motion of approval of the minutes.
I second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, none opposed. Excellent. All right, so we will then accept those minutes. And let's begin. Where we left it before was a robust conversation around qualifications. Ann Harburg was not able to join us at the last meeting, but she did send along some notes. And if you wouldn't mind, could you take a moment to maybe kind of run down some of your basic thoughts on the qualifications? There are some things that are, I would say, more like relatively minor copy edits, right? And then there are perhaps other things that are a bit more to consider. So if we can set aside the more of the copy edits and think about some of the more substantive things that we need to consider for today, that'd be great.
Sure, thanks, MK. I think that the only thing I have in my notes regarding the qualifications, and I did listen in on the meeting that I missed 2 weeks ago, I apologize for missing, is around the qualifications about being a resident of St. Louis City or St. Louis County. And it's my thought, as much as I wish the city and the county would come together, but that's a discussion for a different group of people. I do think that the qualifications should be for St. Louis City residents only. And I say that coming from the Regional Arts Commission, where we fund both St. Louis City and St. Louis County residents. And I think that given the scope of what we're doing, and while there's many great poets region-wide, I do think that we should focus on the city because this is a city effort. I thought Connor brought some good things to the table regarding that. And I just think until the county can establish guidelines around what they want to do or throw support in the pot, I think that we need to leave that open for St. Louis City residents only. But those are my thoughts.
So Connor, she did mention you. Is there anything else that you want to add to the conversation?
No, it's a beautiful day in the city of St. Louis, and I still support one of the qualifications being a city resident. So that's where I'm at.
Excellent. All right, Nikki, any thoughts from you?
I actually agree. I took a look after the meeting and reflected on our conversation and actually took a look earlier this morning and I agree with Ann. So.
Right. So, just as a quick note, Kaylin sent me a text saying that she's suffering from strep throat. So, fortunately, we're on virtually and she cannot share her germs. But if you would like to share your thoughts via chat, or if you want to take a moment, but however you want to express yourself is fine with us, Kaylin.
I guess, sorry, my only worry was, I guess it's semantics. I was just thinking about individuals who maybe like grew up in the city and recently moved to the county because they can still attest to what it's like living in the city if they lived in the city for 18 plus years. So I think that's kind of where my head was at. But I also completely understand wanting it to be for the city. That makes sense.
Thank you, Kaylin. I really appreciate that. Oh, my heart goes out. Okay. Well, then it sounds like we've reached consensus around this particular topic. Um, so since we've reached consensus on this being an eligibility requirement that only St. Louis City residents can apply to become the next poet laureate, I think that we'll need to update the guidelines to reflect that. How should we go about handling that, Christine? Should that just be a vote, or what are we doing here?
I don't necessarily think it needs to be that formal. I'm taking notes on the changes that you'd like to make, and so
Okay.
if everyone's in agreement, I'll just get those things updated on the website
Yep.
once we have our meeting today. Um, I don't know if it's helpful. I can pull up the page right now if you wanted to sort of actively see.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me pull up the Poet Laureate page and I'll share that and we can just scroll down and work through everything until we run out of time or energy.
Yes. And you know what can happen as a result of us doing this particular work is that once everything is updated, there is really nothing except for an opening and closing period for the application stopping us from getting this thing done. So my hope is that by the end of our meeting today, we will have established not only the updated guidelines, but also a day when we'll open and then a day we'll close. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, I had a quick question about that. Christine, this might be for you. So, as of right now, the way that our ordinances are written, the municipal election happens on the first Tuesday after the first Monday, and the swearing in ceremonies happen on the third Tuesday. Now, those, because this year April starts on a Tuesday, April 1st is a Tuesday, that has actually compressed the time between the elections and the swearing in to 1 week, with the elections being on the 8th and the swearing in being on the 15th. I bring that up because in our notes it says that we want to make this decision by the swearing in ceremony on the 15th. Obviously, that is a very tight turnaround time between elections and swearing in. And Christine, what I did read in the ordinance is that there is some discretion for the Board of Aldermen to potentially move that swearing in ceremony. And I saw that you all already moved your sine die to later in the month. So I wanted to see, clarifying with you, if there are any discussions about moving that swearing in ceremony a week back, which would give this task force an additional week before a decision would need to be made.
I will double check with my team on that. I haven't heard anything about that yet, but it's a good point. So
I know this is a weird forum for me to bring it up, but I was reading the meeting notes and I saw that, we want this done by the swearing in on the 15th. And I just, that raised a flag for me. So you and I can talk offline about it, but I did just want to note that while I had you here.
sure, no, I appreciate that.
And one thing I'll add to it is that it's not so much that it'll be done by the 15th, but actually we're thinking about getting it done before then, right? So we want to have opened up the application process, closed the application process, uh, figured out who our three finalists are, interview those finalists, and then have a recommendation. So technically speaking, the goal is to try to move as quickly as possible. So that means that we have a limited window to receive applications. We're already at January 27th. If it seems unrealistic or rushed, then that's something that we can also discuss. But given how long it's been since we've named a poet laureate, and also given now apparently the reduced number of poets that we may consider just poets from the city, I feel like we can reasonably get done with this process, so that we can name the new poet laureate, have the recommendation before the board of aldermen, and then the alders can do their work from there. That's my thinking. Essentially, it's a hot potato, and I would like to move that hot potato on. So let's take a moment here and let's walk through the qualifications. So we know that we're adding a specific qualification about this being a St. Louis City resident. So we do have that. And of course, the addendum is at least 3 years prior to the nomination deadline and remain a resident throughout the 2-year term. That means that we'll need to have a way to check that. I don't know if we have the capacity or capability to check for whether or not a person was a resident for 3 years prior. Um, so that is a question. I don't know who would do that. We don't necessarily have staff for that, but I guess what we can do is through the committee, try to figure out some work through the task force, try to figure out how that works. But that is something that talk about red flags. It's a bit of a red flag for me because that's administrative and we'd have to figure out how to do that. Any thoughts before I move on?
I think typically you would have someone sign an affidavit that
Okay.
said, or their voter registration or something, but I guess it's obviously at the discretion of the committee if that's something that you care enough deeply about that somebody has to have been here for 3 years versus someone who moved in 6 months ago.
Excellent point. Any thoughts?
MK, I'm also wondering if you would want to change that to 2 years prior, because that could just lessen the burden perhaps a little bit.
Sure. I'm open to any of those things. We can eliminate the residency requirement in terms of how long they lived in the city of St. Louis, or we can, as Ann noted, lessen the burden by reducing the number of years that a person needs to have lived in the city. I think I'm open to any of those things. It would be a funny idea if someone decided to move to the city just to become the poet laureate. I think that's a win for the city either way.
We're looking for every way that we can increase the population. That's a perfect. I love it.
Okay. So how do we feel about just striking the 3 years prior to the nomination deadline, and just saying that they are a St. Louis City resident? Yep. Okay. All right. So let's just do that.
I do like that they remain a city resident, though.
Yes. Oh, they should. Oh, for sure. Like
Yeah.
during the term, yeah, that should remain. Absolutely. It's kind of weird to become the St. Louis City Poet Laureate and then move to
Mhm.
Raleigh, Durham. Just as a thought. Okay. Thank you so much, Nikki. The other qualifications. Anything else in the qualifications section? Be committed to bringing poetry to a wide range of places and people. Any other thoughts here? Anybody wants to weigh in on the qualifications? Any other bullets before we move on to nomination requirements?
Just quickly, MK, I don't want to belabor this, but so that the one qualification, be able and available to reach St. Louis audiences through travel or other means. I think that that could use a little explanation. Other means such as, are you thinking like Zoom? Um, you know, I just thought to give like an example of that would be good.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do not remember anything specific we might have said about that in years past, honestly. It seems as though I don't even understand what the consideration might be.
Yeah, I don't either.
So then it might make sense, be able and available to reach St. Louis audiences and end it there.
I'm good with
Anything
that.
else is just awkward, right?
Yeah.
But then again, it doesn't have to be awkward. If there's something that anybody has to say about it that that we should mull over, that's I don't want to be dismissive in any means. So by any means, so just let me know. Otherwise, we can just eliminate
Yeah,
that section of the sentence.
do we have, or have we had in the past any firm commitments such as at least one community event or something to kind of anchor themselves on? Because it feels, even bullet, the one above it, be committed to bringing poetry and then being able and available, it still feels loose.
Mhm.
Um, in that I could kind of say I'm doing either one of those things and still kind of not be doing it.
Fair. Any recommendations as to how we might be able to improve it? Want to give it some thought?
Yeah, I just didn't know if, I mean, how, if there were like specific things throughout the year or two, or um, where we know, this is something where we would want the poet laureate to show up at. Uh, I don't know.
And in the expectations, it does state to participate in at least 4 literary events and 4 ed programs
It
in
does say that.
schools in the region. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if we want to, I don't know, maybe even combine those two, be committed to bringing poetry somehow, those two bullets there, be committed to bringing poetry and then be able and available.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so and okay, so yeah, I would say through literary events and educational programs, like in the bullet above, I would just keep it simple and then the specificity here and the expectations.
That's great.
Mhm.
Okay. Mm, I think do we finish everything with the qualification section? Do we?
You know, I'm sorry to be such a nitpicker, but that last one where it says be prepared to undertake the public role required of the laureate,
Mhm.
I just don't think we're going to get, I don't know if that's a qualification. Um, I mean,
I
I
think,
think
oh,
that by being nominated or by nominating themselves, that I would hope that they're prepared. And because one thing I was thinking would be to change that to poised so that they're just ready to do that, ready to roll out rather than to be prepared. I don't know. And maybe I'm just nitpicking.
I think the key phrase in that is public role.
Mhm.
I think that bullet point is separate for me in the sense that it does. We do say be available to reach St. Louis audiences through travel and other means, or the way that we've edited it. But I do think that bullet point, while maybe more specific or more broad than it needs to be, but I think that public role is really essential there so that anyone applying knows that you're not just sitting and creating poetry. This is a public role in which you engage with the city of St. Louis, with the residents of St. Louis. It was my understanding that that's what that qualification was kind of specifying, was that this is a public role and you need to be ready for that aspect of it.
Yeah. I think we might just be thinking about how to wordsmith it, but ultimately the public role is the key. I think the consideration years ago was strictly about the poet's ability to stand before the public and offer these works and to engage the audiences, to be ready to do that kind of work. And it was meant to discourage people, as Connor uh, points out, discourage people from thinking that this is a role that is armchair, but instead is about community, and that you have to be, bottom line to it, able in some kind of way to engage publics. So,
Mhm.
so we can wordsmith it, but I think we can wordsmith that probably offline. I think we fundamentally agree that this is a this is a position that takes on a public role and that this individual will engage the public in some kind of way. But we can wordsmith it. Boy, sounds great as a word. But ultimately it's about the public role, right? So, all right, I think we're good with this section. Are we ready to move on to the nomination requirements? Okay. Thank you, Christine. So please take a moment. You can review. If there's a particular bullet that you would like to discuss, let's do so. And I know that in your notes, you had mentioned something about biographical sketch. Of course, we talked about eliminating biographical sketch. We're making that into a bio. Um, so there are things that came up prior to today, and certainly you surfaced them again in your notes. And Christine, I'll share Anne's notes with you if she hasn't already shared them with you. But those things are fairly helpful.
I remember a discussion last time about the 3 poems and exceeding 5 pages. Hadn't we discussed putting a minimum of 3 poems and a maximum of 5 pages?
Yes.
This
Yeah.
says up to 3 poems, but I think we talked about that being the minimum last time.
That's right. And so I think with this, we still, if I'm not mistaken, Christine, we still have to update the webpage, right? So today is us preparing to update the webpage, and by the next time we meet, all this should be ready to go, and we should be able to just open up the process if we don't decide on that today.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think what would
correct.
probably be best is you just kind of go through line by line to make sure that I can send you a red line copy of the changes as
Yeah.
I am noting them today and make sure that everything is accurate. I don't know if we'll get through everything. We might
Mhm.
today, and then you can vote on adopting the updates and I'll get it added to the website whenever you do that.
Excellent. So then this week will be, well, today will be us getting through this and maybe setting a tentative date for opening up the process. So let's get through this, and then Christine will give us a document, perhaps a shared document, right? That way we can go into the shared document and access it, make our updates or make our comments in the shared document, and then she'll have it. And once everything is approved, we'll be able to move forward and update the website accordingly. Does that make sense? Does that sound fair? Okay.
Yeah. For one bullet, I guess 1B, if the nomination is not by the poet, is that a statement where they're just clicking the box because that statement is already there and they need to just check that it exists, or they're typing in something or adding it to their nomination, just for my own understanding?
That is a good question. I don't recall how the online application looked. But I
Okay.
think we can make a note about the user experience to make it as user friendly as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I think Connor was right about the minimum of the 3 poems being something we agreed on, not
Yep.
exceeding
Yep.
5.
I
Yeah.
think that's it. So minimum
Um,
of 3 poems, or really, yeah, minimum of 3 poems and no more than 5 pages.
Right.
Yep.
I also think that if they're going to be providing us with an audio or a video, the way that we've done it with the artist support grants at the Regional Arts Commission is to say that they have to submit a PDF document um, with a link to a specified 90-second, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of poetry. So I think that would help too if people are going to do that, an alternative way to submit their work.
Yes.
How many seconds did you say?
I think that's up to us. I mean, if we're saying a minimum of or a minimum of 3 poems, a maximum of 5 pages,
Yeah.
um, you know, I would say at least I would say a minimum of 3 minutes and maybe a maximum of 5.
I would say the challenge there is that for people who are rooted in more of the oral tradition of poetry, there may not be space to do more than one poem if that poem is in fact 3 minutes in length. I would say that if a person wants to create an audio or a video version of a portfolio that would not typically exceed, I don't know. I don't know what the standard is. I think the standard is maybe about 1 minute per page or something
Yeah.
like that. So maybe the 5 minute rule would apply if we're thinking about 1 minute per page.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And I think we could, I mean, if we determine that, I agree with you, MK, but I think then we can determine that wordsmithing of that when we get that document.
Yep. Yep. That is.
Now, and
Mhm.
again, I guess, I'm sorry, I'm working user experience. So if the online submission allows them to upload audio, um, or video.
Well, that was the point that Anne was making regarding the
Oh,
PDF.
I'm sorry. I'm
No, so
sorry. I
that would be
missed it.
like a link probably to like a YouTube or some place where the video or the audio can be housed, and then they would
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, I think probably because of the limitations of technology at City Hall, if you're able to use something like a Google form, that probably makes the most sense. And I think those links could be included there.
Yep.
Hmm. The challenge, I don't want anyone to think that their submission didn't go through or that they're not doing it correctly and then just abandon the process. Um, but I don't know, that's not my day job. I mean, that's not my job here, but just a watch out for me as I think about how often people abandon things on websites just because they think they're doing it wrong or it's not working properly.
Mhm.
And I don't want to miss out on any candidates.
I think that's a good point, and I'm happy to serve as a point person at City Hall for the process if individuals do have questions or concerns, and then I can communicate with all of you. If I think it's something that I shouldn't be deciding myself, that's just an easy question to answer.
Yeah, volunteering.
Excellent.
Okay.
Any other points?
I was good with the rest of it.
All right. If we're good with the rest of it, we can then move on to the next section. Thank you, Christine. So there's a hot link to the online application form.
Yeah, and that's a dead link now, so we'll have to make sure it's updated. And I guess I would just say this piece, like, I don't think we need 7 copies as long as all of you are okay with it being emailed to me.
Mhm.
And then I can distribute it to all of you electronically. I think this is a bit dated in terms of when people were still in love with paper down here.
Excellent point. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else for that section, we see the renomination of previously nominated poets. Okay. Ineligible nominees. Then selection criteria. And I know that you had a few notes here. And again, we can begin to kind of wordsmith it, but is there anything in particular that might change the meaning of a bullet point should we that we should be considering at this time?
I just had some questions around the demonstration of excellence in their artistic work. Um, because sometimes in grant making that can be used as code. So I'm just wondering if we want to add some kind of words such as demonstration of excellence in their artistic work as evidenced by, originality, the potential impact on the audience or community, etc., just to further define that.
Yeah, I think with The demonstration of excellence. I think this is probably as close to how do the critics feel about your work? This is some outside body, somebody else saying that this is an excellent poet. They receive high remarks. Here's an award. That's how I read that. I think that's the only mark of excellence if somebody, if your work is considered excellent by whomever the body of critics are. But that's just my reading. But to your point, Anne, we can add additional language, such as demonstration of excellence in their artistic work by, I would then fill in the blank. I would, again, I would lean heavily towards some sort of body or group that stated that the work is excellent in some kind of way.
When I share the document with you, I'll just kind of put a prompt in there with the red line at Anne's suggestion, just sort of as evidenced by with an ellipses, and then people can kind of think about what language might make sense.
That's great. Any other thoughts on the selection criteria?
Is there anything in particular that we're looking for in the in-person interviews? Um, that would establish a different criteria than what's here?
Let's see.
I don't think so, but like, is there something we're looking for them to demonstrate or show?
I think this was the last effort to ensure that the person is prepared to take on this public role. Um, Unfortunately, this is perhaps quite subjective.
Okay.
This is how the person shows up in an interview,
Yeah.
essentially.
Okay.
I don't know if that's fair for me to phrase it that way, but this is to make sure that we don't select someone who's unprepared to for the role
Mhm.
they say that they want.
I mean, I would think that you would want somebody in that interview. I mean, relatability, I don't know how else to say it, but I just think exuding some type of warmth and wanting to make a connection with the community.
Yeah. It's only because we ultimately are having conversations, right? So what's our grading criteria for how
Yeah.
we have the conversations on the candidates? Um, and because we all might, grade that differently. So what are the three things we might be looking for each of them to demonstrate? I don't know if that's necessary or not for this, but it's just something that I'm thinking about for our conversations as a group afterwards,
Yeah.
or how we
Okay.
justify our recommendation.
Yeah. Sorry, I think someone's going to say something. Anyone was about to say something?
I was just going to, and I was just thinking that perhaps after this is done, maybe we could set up some kind of rubric um for those conversations that we agree upon as a group.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree with that. And and because this is a public meeting, anybody who wants to kind of hear the iterative process that we'll undergo, especially when considering applicants during the interview process will certainly learn a lot during that period because this is nothing that's happening behind closed doors. This is for public. This is for the public. So, no, I think that's a good point to raise. I don't think that stops us from once we're done publishing and moving forward with the application process. But I think in the intervening weeks, we determine what we're looking for just so that we can establish criteria among the members of the task force around what is acceptable and what is not. But unfortunately, again, this is still largely a subjective process. I remember instances in the past where people who held a person who held this seat would have these interviews or have these discussions with individuals. And then in that meeting, that person would decide, this is like a one-on-one, this person would decide that this person was unfit in some kind of way. And that was unfortunate. And again, but that speaks to the the subjective nature of it. So I think you're right, Nikki. We'll establish something that feels fair in the process so that we don't arbitrarily make a decision or speak from a place of bias and exclude someone simply because we didn't like how they smiled in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that is a thing. Okay. Anything else? Because we kind of touched on the selection criteria and the selection process. Anything else from these two areas that someone wants to discuss?
I'll update this selection process section to indicate that the 3 semifinalists will also have a in-person interview.
Yes. Thank you. All right. I think at this point we can scroll down to the expectations of the position, and then that will conclude the review. Again, if anyone has any comments for any of the bullets, let's have that discussion. Again, and I know that you have different notes. Feel free to share.
This was the area where I didn't have notes,
Oh, I
except
missed.
for a random comma.
Okay. Well, we'll deal with that random comma. We'll absolutely do that.
I didn't have anything on this either.
Okay. All right. Great. So we have roughly about 19 minutes left. What I would like to do, I would love to do this. I don't know if this is possible, especially given what kind of brought up earlier. What I would love to do is to create a window for the application process, and then determine kind of a time period when we would do the interviews. I know that's tough to consider, but I would like to do that. What would be fair? Would a month be fair to determine? Let's say if we were to open it somewhere around sometime around early February. I mean, we would have to meet next week to like approve everything. So that would be, what's that, February 3rd?
Mhm.
No, no, no. That would be, yeah, February 3rd. So that would be the time when we would approve the new criteria, all the things. And then upon approval, it would be nice then to, I don't know how long it would take to update the website and then be able to open up the process. So I think we could probably open up the process as late. Well, I'm saying late, but I don't know. As late as maybe February 10th. Is that what we're potentially looking at if we were to do it? And then how long would we want to keep the application process open if we could open by or could do it by February 10th? How long would
What's the
Mhm.
How is it being communicated that it's open? Because I guess I'm a little worried that we're opening it February 10th and then not telling anyone it's open until February 10th. Can we start telling people it will be open starting start next week, or not, sorry, the beginning of the week of February 3rd, and saying, hey, applications will be open February 10th, so that they're on there's some communication happening
Yeah.
so that we're not behind several weeks trying to ramp up and get people engaged and then applying.
I
Go
am
right ahead, Connor.
happy to make that happen. Happy to use the communications of the city of St. Louis to get that information out there. I think what that would require would be just Christine making sure that the website, the web page is updated. And if that's true, my team is more than happy to get some social media out there to help guide you guys. I also send out a weekly comms memo to our neighborhood organizations and stuff. I'm happy to include it in there. So we can certainly begin the communications process prior to February 10th, and then continue it throughout the submission period. So yeah, that's certainly doable.
Nice, nice.
If
Okay.
it's possible, I might suggest just pushing 1 week out because the board's breaks until April on February 7th, and we have a lot going on up until that point. So just like I don't have access to update the website. It's our comms team. And so just I think in order to make sure everything is, I feel confident that we can get everything where we need to, that maybe you could do the approvals next week. We could start communicating the week of the 10th for it to open on the 17th. And I think that still gives you plenty of time. I did confirm that the swearing in for the mayor and odd numbered alderman will be April 22nd. So we do have another full week past that original date that I gave you of the 15th.
Okay. So then how long should we have the application window open? Should it be open maybe 3 weeks? You thinking 4 weeks? What's the thought?
And I'm sorry, Christine, what did you say was when the website would be updated?
I feel confident that if you all are able to make all the changes to everything that you would like to have updated at the meeting next week on the 3rd, then we can start communicating everything on the 10th
On the 10th.
for opening the application on the 17th.
Or opening on the 17th. So we would leave it, MK, you said 3 weeks. 1, 2, 3. That would get us March 10th. And then closing applications, that's just to close the applications, right? Then we have to review.
Yep.
So we probably need about a week to review. Then we have to select from that review, we're selecting 3 finalists, semifinalists,
Yep.
and then have to schedule then 3 in-person meetings with all of us
Yeah, but
together.
let me ask you this. Do we want to just say in-person meetings? Do we want to leave the possibility for a virtual meeting?
Oh, virtual. I'm sorry. Just an interview I meant. In
Yeah, yeah.
virtual, just an interview. Okay.
Okay.
But it would be with this group though, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we're in the week of kind of like March 24th. Yeah. 31st. Yeah, I think we'll be good. Yeah, so leave it open for 3 weeks. It'll give us about maybe a week and a half if we really need it, 2 weeks to select 3 semifinalists. Then give us about a week and a half to do the interviews, based on scheduling and selecting from there. Yeah.
So are you thinking close the application on March 10th? If it opens on the 17th?
Yep.
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 Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it may be helpful to let people know when to anticipate interviews. That way, when they apply, they won't be surprised since we do have a tight turnaround time. If we add that to the one of the bullet points, maybe under
Yeah.
the selection process, just let folks know that we're thinking the week of the 24th and 31st, we would be doing interviews.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then just the other date you have to be cognizant of is if this person is going to participate in the swearing in ceremony, the board is going to have to approve them either on the meeting, I'll have to check with our clerk, the meeting on the 21st, which is the last meeting of the old session, or during the meeting on the 22nd. I'm thinking it makes more sense on the 21st.
All right. If we can accomplish that, then I think we can. I guess the main thing is that out of our body will come a recommendation for who the next poet laureate will be, and then that moves on to the board, and then the board votes to determine if this person will be the next poet laureate, and then after that, this person is the poet laureate as far as we're concerned. Well, actually, as far as we're concerned, whoever we recommend is, and then you make it official. If there are no problems, then we proceed. Okay. So then we'll have the timeline typed up as well with the minutes, and then we can move forward from there.
Yeah, I'll probably incorporate all of the dates into what's going to be posted on the website, just so the public also knows what to expect and any potential nominees.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then maybe at the next meeting, people can start looking at their calendars. It may be a good idea just because there's so many of you, to make sure that you have some chunks of time set aside on those 2 weeks for interviews. Maybe just hold a couple dates and times on your calendars.
That'll be great. That is wise.
Yeah, because then what we really could do, I mean, if we could just get some dates and times on hold for us, we could just have them select which ones they want, which slot.
When they apply.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess whenever we select the three,
Okay.
and let
Okay.
them know that they've been selected, then we can let them know.
Yep.
Pick a slot.
Yeah. This is more so logistical on our end to make it as efficient as possible. If we know the dates, we've held the dates, we give them the options, and then we can proceed from there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only other consideration regarding the interview is the possibility that the person may need to, for whatever reason, meet in person. We can cross that bridge of accommodation when necessary, but please hold it in your mind that a person may request to meet in person because maybe it's a digital divide issue, maybe their internet is unstable. But the bottom line to it that we may need to make that accommodation. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to be physically in the room, but we may be able to do something where we have a meeting space and whoever can participate virtually still. It's just participating virtually. We're just making the accommodation for that individual. So that means perhaps I will be present and then whomever else can join me. Plus, we'll still have the virtual aspect. I just want to make sure we have that accommodation as necessary.
We have that capability to do hybrid meetings in the Kennedy hearing room at City Hall. The only thing is we would just have to be conscientious about the Board of Aldermen's schedule, but I don't think there should be anything happening since we'll be on recess.
Okay, excellent.
You're an efficient bunch.
I love that. I love that. Well, if there's is there anything else that we need to cover? Right. I think that's it. All right. So that said, I like to move to adjourn. Do I have a second? I guess we need to do a roll call, right? Or we're good. Okay.
You could just, yeah, as long as you get a second, just
So I got a second from Ann. Did I get a second from you, Ann?
Yes,
got
you
it.
did.
Everybody's in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll meet again February 3rd to finalize the selection criteria. We'll have all the dates available when we move forward. Thank you very much.